Today we're talking about crosstabs or contingency table analysis. So what are crosstabs and how do we go about constructing them, and then what do they tell us about the relationship between two variables? That's what we're going to be talking about today and next week. So let's start with what are contingency tables. Contingency tables are also known as crosstabs or cross-tabulations. It displays data in such a way that we can look at whether one variable, the independent variable, seems to be having an effect or influence on a second variable, the dependent variable. Now we have to be really careful about using the word cause. We can't say that one variable causes the other variable unless we have a particular type of data. And so when we're just looking at data like from the general social survey or from one particular point in time, we're not talking about causation. We're talking about correlation or a relationship. So it's important to understand that there may be a relationship between two variables, but we don't ever use the word cause. Now, what kind of variables can you use crosstabs for? Well, crosstabs are best used for nominal and ordinal level variables. You can also use it with numeric variables, so ratio and interval. The only thing to keep in mind is that the more categories you have, the more complicated and the larger your table is going to be. And so sometimes we want to take our numeric level variables and break them down into categories. And so you might take a variable like age, where you just ask a person how old are you, and we might want to group those into categories and say maybe combine all the people who say that they're 18 to 24, 25 to 34, so on and so forth. And so for contingency tables, while you can do it with any number of categories and with any level of measurement, it's best to kind of stick with simpler variables, and you'll see why when we go to our first example. So our first example we're going to look at is, do women attend religious services more than men? And our hypothesis is that if someone is a woman, then they are more likely to attend religious services. So our independent variable here is sex, and our dependent variable is church attendance. And if we had a null hypothesis, if we were doing hypothesis testing, it would be there is no difference in religious service attendance based on sex. So with these two variables, let me show you what an SPSS crosstab looks like. Looks like this. So in this crosstab, you'll notice that we have the independent variable here across the top. We have respondent sex, and you can see the categories male and female. And then here down the rows, you have the dependent variable going this direction. So you have from never to more than once a week. So you can see how the more categories you have, the more complex your table becomes. When you have fewer categories, it's a little bit easier to read the relationship. So you have two things in each cell. Basically what a crosstab does is it divides up your data based on the variables that you've selected. So here we're dividing the data by male and female, and then we're dividing the data by how often they attend religious services. So in each box you're going to have a count and you're going to have a percent. The count is the number of men, in this case, the number of men who also said that they never attend religious services. In this box here, we have the number of women, or the number of females, who identified on the survey that they were female and then identified that they never attend religious services. Then the percent is going to be the percent in the column. So this is the percent of men and then the percent of women. So we can see that 23.6% of men never attend religious services, while 15.5% of women or females never attend religious services. So the count isn't necessarily the most helpful because the count is going to vary based on the total in. So when you're making a comparison between these two categories of men and women, it's more important to look at the percentage than it is to look at the raw number. So how would this relate back to our hypothesis? Well, we can see that males are more likely than females to never attend religious services. And then if we go down, we can see that males are higher here, males are higher here, males are higher here, and then at once a month we see females are higher, females are higher, females are higher, females are higher, and then females are higher. So what it looks like is there's this trend where kind of the categories of less likely to go to church, men have the higher percentage, and then when we switch over, women have the higher percentage. So with this, it kind of supports our hypothesis that women are more likely to attend religious services than men. We don't know for sure. We'll test that later on by using something called chi-square and also something called lambda. So we'll talk about those in the next video. But for now, that's what this relationship seems to be indicating. So how do we set up a contingency table by hand? To set up the table, we're going to put the independent variable going across the top and the dependent variable across the side. And if we have ordinal or numerical level data, we're going to want to be sure to arrange those categories in order from low to high. So then we're going to go through our data and place each response into its appropriate cell based on how they responded to both questions. And then we'll need to find column percents, and we'll divide the number in each cell by the column total. So let's go ahead and do an example. I've got an example in a Word document. You also have access to this Word document. It's on Open Class. And so here I have the respondents, and then I have a blank table. And so across the top, I'm going to have my categories for the independent variable. And here you can see that my variables are: has respondent done volunteer work in the last year, and then age. So age is going to be my independent variable. Age has to come first. So I'm going to put my categories across the top for age. So 18 to 25, and then we have 26 to 40, and then we have 41 to 60, and we have 61 to 89. And then we're going to have a space for total. And actually, I've got an extra box here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete one of my columns because we don't need that many, and this is going to be my total. So then for how often respondent has done volunteer work, we're going to have not at all in past year. And then we're going to have, for the second category, we have at least once in past year. And then for my third category, we have at least once a month. So those are my categories. So again, I've got an extra, I'm not sure why I have, we're going to delete that row because I have an extra row. So now that we've got our columns in place and our labels, now we can go through and for each respondent, we are going to look at where they match up. So let's look at respondent 1. Respondent 1 says that they have attended, done volunteer work not at all in the past year, and they're 18 to 25. So they're 18 to 25 and not at all in the past year. So I'm just going to put a 1 in there. So you want to just kind of put hash marks in there, and then at the end we'll total them up and put the number and do the percentages. And then what I like to do is I generally cross them off as I complete them. Since I'm using a computer, I'm just going to go ahead and bold them so that I know that it's been done. So then my second one is at least once in the past year, 26 to 40. So 26 to 40, at least once in the past year. So I'm going to go ahead and do these. Go ahead and do them on your own, and then we'll come back and you'll see kind of all of my hash marks there.